Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. For everyone's information, the session is recorded. For anybody who joins late, they will have access to a recording for everyone here on time. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for joining. It will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel for rewatching, viewing again at a later time. So again, thanks everybody for joining. My name is Nathan Hill. I am the Infrastructure Supervisor here at the Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation. For anybody who may not know, we provide technical advisory service to all 133 First Nation communities in Ontario. The focus of this presentation, construction best practices, my tips for a successful construction project. The focus is on residential construction. So whether it's a single family dwelling, one home, construction of multiple homes, a lot of the same principles apply. Might change if depending on the scale of the project, but that is the focus of the presentation. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you for your interest, and thank you to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation for sponsoring this session. I am going to, there we go. Everybody can see. If anybody has maybe seen this before, maybe something they're familiar with, the project triangle, project management triangle. I guess some of these principles definitely apply when it relates to construction of a home, of a single family dwelling. So to give a bit of context, if you look at scope, cost, and time are three constraints that you would have on virtually any project. And the three of those would have the impact on the outcome or the quality of the project. So basically, any change to one of those, the scope, the cost, or the time, is going to have an impact on the other two. So I guess as an example, changing the scope. So if you originally start with, you're going to build one home, now you want to build two homes. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on the cost and the time. Alternatively, you want to build three homes, change your mind, goes down to two homes. Again, that's going to have an impact in the opposite way on the cost and the time. Alternatively, your cost, your budget is often the biggest driving factor, is going to determine what you're able to achieve, the scope, and how quickly you're able to achieve that, right? So basically, changing any one of the factors will often have an effect on the other two and the quality at the end. So just, I guess, the basic principle of a project. The presentation itself is going to go through 6 stages of a project, 6 stages of a housing construction project, concept all the way through closeout. These are not necessarily set in stone stages, but they are going to vary quite a bit depending on the size of your project, the scale, the scope, again, the number of homes you're building, all that sort of stuff. And we'll go through that. Generally, they'd be a fairly accurate representation of the stages of a construction project. So first of all, concept. Concept is generally First Nation would have a need, and the project would be initiated to meet that need. Generally speaking, for most of us here, I would think, and First Nation communities, would be to address the housing shortage or add additional housing to the existing housing stock, to occupy members of the community. It could be the construction of a new home, replacing an existing home, or renovating a home that already exists. The need that that the First Nation has should be clearly defined, and the project should be tailored to meet that need. So basically, if the number of bedrooms, the type of construction, the size of the homes, all that sort of stuff should be into consideration at this point of the project. Um, some communities, they have, I guess, a waiting list, a survey, um, uh, a community plan of the type of housing that their community members want. Maybe they've built various styles through over the years, and they kind of have an idea of the type of units that suit them best. If you're a lot of the population consists of growing families, uh, say 1 to 2 bedroom units may not be sufficient. You may be looking at larger 3 to 4 bedroom units. Alternatively, and maybe if you're building for an aging population, a higher number of smaller, maybe 1 to 2 bedroom units, may be a better fit. But again, this is the point where that need would be identified, and the project should be tailored to meet that need. I guess emergency housing, just to touch on, I know that's something that we've worked with communities on. I know it's, generally wants to be done in a quick fashion, a quick turnaround. I mean, it should still go through a similar process and be designed, constructed, uh, inspected, all that sort of stuff by qualified individuals, right? And so that making sure that the occupants in the units are, at the end of the day, that they're safe and it's a healthy environment for them. So generally, if a community, they may have a waiting list. So you have an idea of I guess a family is looking for a home, an elder, a single individual looking for a home, and it would tailor the type of construction that you're looking at. I know, a lot of communities don't have the luxury of choice in all the time as it relates to the type of housing. I mean, generally speaking, more housing is always going to be a good thing. But again, if there is a need that is clear and apparent, the unit should be designed to meet and to kind of to address that need. Again, you could be replacing a construction of a new unit, so where no unit existed previously, replacing a existing deteriorated unit, maybe very similar to what was there, or exactly the same as to what was there, um, or a major renovation to an existing unit to make it livable for a family. A lot of the, I guess, principles are going to apply in the same way, um, depending on how the project looks. Um, Design. So again, this is when, uh, again, the need has been identified. We know we want to build X number of homes. We want to build 3 bedroom homes, single bedroom homes, whatever that determination is. And now we're looking into what they're going to actually look like. Um, Again, single family dwelling, so that's a detached home, multi-unit construction, townhouses, row houses, things like that. Making sure that they're designed, reviewed by qualified individuals, depending on your jurisdiction, what that might look like, and foundation type and location. Building for your region, for the area where the units are proposed to be located, and what that might look like. Again, number of bedrooms, layout, maybe you want a certain number of units to be accessible, or all of the units to be accessible, or can be made accessible in the future, right? Those are considerations at this point, single story versus maybe two-story or more, and what that might look like. Um, again, building to your geographical location. Um, Designers will size and space structural framing members based on the proposed snow load for a specific region, right? So if you take a set of drawings from a different region, they may not uh, be adequate in that way to support snow loads for that for your region, right? That's something we've seen before where a set of drawings from the United States, right? And they're designed for that specific region, maybe not taking into account the climate of the region where the units are actually going to be built. So the the design should take that into consideration. Um, Again, accessible, so maybe not a unit to be made fully accessible, but um, maybe considerations for the future. So doorway sizes, blocking for grab bars, all that sort of stuff. Just making sure that that's implemented, so that again, everybody everybody ages, everybody gets older. That's one thing, one certainty in life. So um, it's inevitable that somebody may need some of these units to be accessible at some point in the future. So considering for some of those at the design stage, at this stage of a project is generally a lot more cost effective than making those major changes and renovations either during construction or again renovating after the unit has been built, maybe 15 years down the road. Some, I guess, projects, depending on, say, funding, if you're building a certain number of units, they may require some of them to be designed to be accessible or can be used in that way. So just something to, I guess, keep in mind. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, and most of that, like I said, interior doorways for like a master bedroom, master washroom. Um, Generally easier to include at this stage, say a wider uh, doorway at this point in construction, a lot easier to implement than again renovating in the future and not just relying on minimum code requirements, whichever code
Your
that
call has been
your
forwarded to voicemail. The
region is
person you're trying to reach is not
building to.
available. The tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up.
Sorry, Kelly. I think we can
Aaron, Kelly here. Give me a call when you got a
phone
chance.
call.
But
Design. So again, the type of units, how the units are, I guess, designed to look detached. So a single, a single dwelling. A lot of people would likely be familiar with. Again, not attached to any other unit. Duplex, either stacked or side by side.
Thomas,
Again,
how you doing?
sharing a
Good.
Hey
Got a little
Kelly,
bit
would
of
you
good
mind
news.
muting?
We're
We
gonna
can, I think that's
try
you that we
to
can
go back
hear.
to work here next week. Um, I got the inspector coming on Wednesday. I had talked with Brad and Kirk there to get down to your guys' houses down there.
There we go. Thank you. So yeah, again, how the units are designed, how they're implemented, maybe your community, maybe your project team, your design team has a preference. Maybe your funding has some element of dictating this, but again, at this point is when it's going to be determined how they would look. So again, a duplex where you'd be essentially sharing again a common wall, um, or a townhouse, row house, maybe triplex, fourplex, fiveplex, whatever that is, where you have multiple units sharing those common walls and fire separations between each unit. Um, again, this is when that would be determined. Again, the design should be completed by a qualified person, whatever that looks like for your jurisdiction. So for us here in Ontario, a professional engineer, professional architect, in Ontario, somebody holding a BCIN, their qualifications under the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They should be the ones providing drawings, and their credentials should be indicated on the drawings, showing their qualifications and I guess limitations as far as what they're able to design and propose. Drawings should be up to date. So again, we've seen drawings that are, you have a set of drawings that's maybe 5+ years out of date, with code changes, with the way the construction industry evolves. A set of drawings can fall out of date relatively quickly, and then maybe insulation values are not relevant. They're not up to current standards. So again, then you're falling behind, and you're not building to, I guess, relevant code of today, but losing out on maybe a bit of quality over the long run. And again, determining which building code the drawings are, or the building is expected to meet, right? Whether that's a provincial building code for us in Ontario, the Ontario Building Code, or say the National Building Code of Canada, should be clearly identified in the drawings. It shouldn't say like either. It shouldn't say National Building Code or Provincial Building Code or both. There are differences between the codes, and it's not always possible to satisfy both in that way. So it should be clearly identified which code these drawings are designed to meet, and clearly identified by the designer which code this building is going to be constructed to, right? So that's for the people, owners of the building, so the First Nation, somebody providing inspections, the contractors, subcontractors, so that it's all clear right from the beginning of the project. Foundation type and location. So again, based on your geographical location, realistically, some foundation types may not work as well as others, right? If you're in an area of high water table, where I know for us here in Ontario, a lot of communities are, maybe a full height basement is not the best option, right? Maybe it's not the best option long term, depending on, again, your soil type, your water table in that area. Like there's a lot of considerations that go into that. But again, the design should reflect that. It should reflect the geographical location, right? If you're maybe constructing on an area that was previously filled, right? Generally speaking, footings should be adequately supported on undisturbed soil, or soil with suitable bearing capacity. So, maybe if it's somebody who's in the community that isn't familiar with that history of that area in that part of the community, having that local knowledge and expertise, knowing that area was filled in however many years ago. So it's very important into the decision-making process of the, site selection where the unit is going to be constructed. Pre-construction. So bidding for contractors, again, site selection, once it's selected, site prep, and utilities. Bidding, so maybe you're planning on hiring a general contractor who's going to oversee the entire project. Maybe the First Nation has some capability to hire subcontractors and manage some of that on their own, hire someone to foundation, framing, plumbing, electrical, etc. Generally speaking, that's gonna require a little bit more administration, a little bit more expertise on the First Nation side than hiring a general contractor. It could save money as opposed to hiring a general contractor who's going to take on a lot of that administration. But again, if the community doesn't have that level of expertise, it may not work out over the long run. Any contractors that are bidding, again, on a set of drawings on a project should be bidding on the same information, right? So if there are changes to these drawings, if there are updates, changes to the site, any of that sort of stuff, should be kind of clarified, should be disclosed to any interested bidders, just so they all have the same information. And I know it's not always possible, but the lowest bidder shouldn't always be the automatic winner, right? I've seen it before. Contractors they make a mistake in their bidding, and that's why they ended up as the lowest bidder. But it should be reviewed to make sure that what they're pricing is accurate. They are pricing on the actual construction documents, and that they're including everything as part of their bid, right? You don't want to get to a point during construction where something wasn't included, because then you're often looking into I guess an administrative and logistical issues for that. Site selection. So again, this is maybe some element of local knowledge and expertise that goes a long way for something like this. Again, if you're maybe starting a subdivision, constructing a large number of homes, or let's say one unit in a certain location, may have already been decided, but things like the depth of the water table, the soil type for that area, that soil type that's common in your community. Again, a lot of those considerations, and it should factor into the design itself, right? A site that is difficult to get to will often increase the costs and make it more challenging, I guess, in the long run as far as constructing. And I guess just a consideration that I wanted to include was radon gas. So if anybody's unfamiliar, radon gas, my understanding is the leading cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke. So it's something that's, I guess, in the construction industry, in building codes, all that sort of stuff, is becoming a little bit more common, a little bit more, I guess, identified. So it's not necessarily always as simple as that. This part of the community has radon, this one doesn't. My understanding, it doesn't necessarily work that way. You could build 2 units directly beside each other. And the only way to determine, I guess, the presence of radon gas would be testing. So you're doing testing in each unit, and then you could get that information at the end. What you can do during construction is include measures such as rough-in for future radon mitigation, or include either passive or mechanical radon mitigation as part of your design. So if it is something that you're familiar with, if it's something that's maybe common in your community, it's definitely something to consider at the very least, rough-in for radon mitigation. Some of those, like even a rough-in for radon mitigation, generally speaking, say Ontario Building Code, National Building Code, at the minimum, that's what would be mandatory. but something like that, the rough-in would be significantly less expensive to install during construction as opposed to adding through renovation later. So it's relatively straightforward. You're following the requirements of the code, installing a rough-in, and if it needs to be addressed in the future, it's there and can be added onto. Site prep. So again, clearing, lot clearing. The lot may be clear, may not, may require a removal of existing vegetation, trees, preparing the raw land for construction. And again, that's going to vary quite a bit by the scale of the project, by the scope, the size of the lot, the number of housing units being constructed, right? Your foundation design may include a required bearing capacity for the soil that is supporting the building. Different soil types would typically have different capacities that they're capable of supporting. If you encounter soft clay or loose sand during construction, they may not be adequate to support a foundation type and may require additional measures such as a geotechnical investigation to determine the bearing capacity. So again, some of that, I guess, local knowledge would go a long way for that, right? If you're building on an area, again, that was filled in, not properly engineered and compacted, well filled, may run into issues with supporting. Pre-construction, so again, your utilities, water, wastewater. So maybe you have piped water, piped sewer nearby that you're tying into. Maybe using a different water source, a well or a cistern, if a portion of your community isn't on a dedicated water line. You could be installing an on-site sewage system to handle wastewater that's generated. Generally with say a well or cistern in combination with an on-site sewage system is going to necessitate a larger lot size than piped water and sewer. So definitely something to consider, how the lot is arranged, the size of the lot, where some of those would go. If there is an on-site sewage system, where it's going to be located. And again, other utilities, electricity, above ground, underground. If your community has natural gas, propane, again, where those might be coming from, and getting them to the site. Procurement. This is one that is going to vary quite a bit, depending on the scale and the scope of the project, right? So if you're building a single home, a single dwelling unit, procurement stage may be relatively, I guess, straightforward, relatively minor in scope. If you're building 10 units, 10 single family dwellings, a couple of multi-unit buildings, procurement stage is generally going to look quite a bit different. Procurement basically purchasing, acquiring, stockpiling large quantities of materials that you're going to use throughout construction. Timing that can generally save a bit of money where possible. It can help offset cost fluctuations that unfortunately seem to go in one direction, that's up. But again, purchasing and stockpiling some of this material at a certain point can at least, I guess, lock in pricing and help provide maybe concrete numbers as it relates to budget. One, I guess, consideration is, again, stockpiling of those materials, making sure that there is somewhere suitable to store the materials. somewhere safe, suitable, so that they're not going to be affected by weather or other elements. Lumber, trusses, that sort of stuff stored inadequately for long periods of time. Generally, they're not going to install the way that they should, and could lead to issues where they may need to be replaced or portions need to be replaced. Again, storing materials in a weather-controlled environment would be important, right? Say you're purchasing a number of HRVs, insulation, whatever it could be, storing it in a weather-controlled, safe, secure location is going to be vitally important. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not always an option, right? So then you're relying on getting material to site, getting it installed, but I guess stockpiling can be an effective measure. Construction. So now we've gone through all that. Now we're building something, right? So health and safety, my opinion, should be a top consideration. Should be very important. Inspections, again, throughout the process. Delays are inevitable. They're going to happen. And changes to the design and what I guess what that could look like. Health and safety, again, my opinion, should be a high priority. Determine who's responsible, who's the responsible party for site safety. Generally speaking, the constructor, at least for us here, is the one responsible for construction site safety. I don't know if it's as simple as that. I wouldn't profess to say that it's as simple as that. So I generally encourage anybody to have a policy requiring appropriate PPE, steel toe boots, hard hat, high visibility vests, all that sort of stuff on site, right? I've been to sites where it's not required and nobody's wearing it. I've been to sites where it is required, and it's you're not walking on site unless you have, again, hard hat, steel toe boots, high vis vest, all that sort of stuff. Generally speaking, anybody from our group is traveling with that equipment and exercising that on site. But again, I would encourage that for any community to have that as a policy on their site. Inspections. So again, inspections are going, and as an inspector, not I guess maybe I know firsthand. Inspections are important part of any construction project. I guess third party overview of the project, making sure that it's being constructed as per the design, as per the approved design, and meeting the requirements of the applicable building code. I'd say the most important thing about inspections is making sure that an inspector is on site for those correct stages of construction, right? So your funding agreement may include, we require inspections at the inspection reports at these stages: footing, foundation, framing, plumbing, insulation, final, all that sort of stuff. If it's a CMHC Section 95 project, it may require a certificate of code compliance by a qualified individual at the pre-backfill, pre-drywall, and final stages. So again, it's just important to make sure that an inspector is on site at the correct stages, depending on your project. Some inspectors, they may not sign off on code compliance for areas that are concealed. So if they weren't there for pre-drywall, it may be tough for them to comfortably sign off on that stage, right? So an inspector may want to be there to inspect plumbing, insulation, to feel comfortable signing off on, say, pre-drywall for code compliance. So again, just something to consider. And I know it's maybe goes hand in hand with delays, which we're gonna look at next, but um, contractors don't often want to delay a project to wait for an inspector to show up. So a lot of it just goes to communication and making sure that there's a clear line of communication and making sure that parties are informed and that they can be available when possible. Again, delays are generally you're going to have a schedule at the start of a project. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play out the way that you may have planned, and delays are generally very likely to occur. It could occur for a number of reasons, weather, staffing issues from the First Nation, staffing or scheduling for contractors or subcontractors. The plumbing contractor can't start until the framing is done, but the framing contractor may be waiting for windows and doors to arrive on site to install. Like there's a number of um, trades that are going to be kind of working on top of one another and getting the project through to a completed state. And it's a balancing act at a certain point to make sure that uh, everybody is there when they need to be and that they can adequately and safely complete their work. One delay on a certain stage could have an impact on the entire project. Again, delays are inevitable, and construction schedule will likely need to be adjusted at some point for a number of reasons. And again, that's where having a general contractor may be worthwhile, and they're going to handle those scheduling issues. Where if a First Nation is hiring subcontractors on their own, maybe a bit more of a administrative legwork on their end as it relates to scheduling and delays and making sure contractors are available. Changes to the design. So again, there should be a design, what we talked about earlier, that's approved, community is happy with, and that they expect to be built. Changes are not uncommon. The owner of the project the First Nation, may want to make changes to the project, to the design at some point in construction. The designer typically should be consulted on changes, maybe changes affecting the structure, major changes like that. Generally speaking, changes should not be made on site without proper, correspondence with the community, the designer, all that sort of stuff. If the designer proposed a certain R value or insulation value for a ceiling or exterior walls, that is what should be installed. The assembly may be designed above minimum code requirements, and you shouldn't look at it and revert to minimum code requirements on site without that proper consultation. Unfortunately, that's something I have seen. There's a design in place by a qualified person. That's what should be followed, right? Not necessarily, well, do we need to do that? What's minimum code, right? Like that's they designed it a certain way. It should be constructed right to that design. Closeout. So again, project is done, project is finishing, and what that kind of looks like, documentation, inspection reports from an inspector, warranties that may be available, and maybe most importantly, maintenance. Documentation. So if this could be a modular type build, a modular unit, generally should include documentation such as CSA A277. If the unit is built to that standard, there should be documentation from inspections that took place in the factory, and that should be provided to the community, to the owner, to the First Nation, and be readily available for their review, and they can retain those. The unit itself should include a label inside indicating that the unit was built to that CSA standard. And that label would include information for an inspector, for somebody maybe looking at maintenance or repairs on the home in the future, telling them all the information that they would need and to what unit, what standard and specifications this unit was constructed to. Outstanding deficiencies should be addressed by the contractor. And generally, the First Nation may include a holdback of funds until deficiencies are sufficiently addressed. Could include outstanding, maybe minor items, exterior caulking, final grading, exterior finishes, things like that, that can only be completed, I guess, as weather will allow, as weather dictates. But they still should be followed up on. You don't want a house to sit at, say, 90, 99, 98%. You want this finished, right? You want caulking, final grading, splash pads, all that sort of stuff completed, and I guess the house finished to the community's satisfaction, right? Inspection reports, I would expect information like that, the I guess minor deficiencies to be included on an inspection report. Documented, noted, showing what is outstanding, maybe a percentage of completion showing what needs to be done. But again, any previous reports, if you have footing, foundation, framing, plumbing, whatever, inspection reports should be kept on file, maybe provided to a funder, but just making sure that that's maintained for record keeping. And if their question arises as far as, I guess, inspections, some inspectors may include or take photos at certain stages. Maybe that would be included, or if they'd maintain those on their end, but definitely something where, if there's a question on how something was installed or what was installed, you can look back at some of those. Again, a certificate of code, if a unit requires a certificate of code compliance, excuse me, how that provided by an inspector, making sure that that's maintained on file and available to provide to funders when necessary. Again, an inspector likely may not be able to sign off on code compliance if they weren't on site, or if something has been concealed that they weren't able to see. And I guess how maybe the limits on what the inspections would include, right? So they may be inspecting for code compliance, they may be inspecting for progress, but they may not be commenting on, say, quality of installation, quality of material, quality of finishes, drywall, mudding and taping. So they may not be something that is considered under the inspections, but just something to keep in mind on. Not that it shouldn't be addressed. It just may need to be addressed in a different way, right? Should be noted, should be documented. If the First Nation is unhappy with quality in a certain aspect, make sure it is addressed, make sure the contractor is aware of that, and there's a plan to move forward on how to address that. Warranties. I'd say warranties for residential construction can be somewhat limited. Any I guess uh warranty information should be provided on I guess appliances, items or work that is covered by a warranty. Could include materials such as roofing, or appliances, so furnace, hot water heater, kitchen appliances, if those are supplied, any of that sort of stuff. If there's a warranty to some extent, that information should be provided to the community. Um, Manuals for those. So, right, so if there's a furnace, forced air furnace, HRV, heat recovery ventilator would come with manuals. Those should stay on site. First Nation should be aware it's with the HRV, it's with the furnace, what hot water heater, whatever it is. Something like an HRV, heat recovery ventilator manual. It will include important information as far as maintenance, right? So not necessarily it was warranty, but how the unit has to be maintained by the manufacturer, right? A lot of the manuals can be found online. They can be dug up if you have the serial number, if you have the that information. But sometimes it's just easy to look and find the manual on online or on site, I should say. And lastly, maintenance in my mind, once the unit's completed and established, maintenance is, should be one of the most important considerations for a unit, determining who is responsible for what elements of maintenance, exterior, lawn maintenance, snow removal, all that sort of stuff. What the expectations are for the occupant, what they if they are if and what are responsible for. We just kind of talked about was HRV maintenance, heat recovery ventilator maintenance. If you're unfamiliar, we did do a session on that, so you can go check out our YouTube channel for that one. But basically, identifying who's responsible in the way of maintenance. And in my mind, importantly, at this stage, for somebody moving into a unit, is education on some of those components. So not only necessarily the maintenance, but operation of the HRV, operation of bathroom exhaust fans, kitchen range hood, forced air furnace, any of that sort of stuff. Somebody maybe moving from say a unit that didn't have an HRV before, and they don't know the importance of it, right? They don't know how to work it. They've never had to before, so they may not understand, or they may not know the importance of proper HRV operation. So I think it's very important to educate tenants. Here's and that could be the subcontractor, the installer, a technical professional from the community who might be familiar, saying, hey, here's your HRV, here's what it does, here's how you run it, all that sort of stuff, right? Replacing furnace filters, right? And who's responsible for that? So stuff like that. Annual inspections. So, I know some communities do, but I'd encourage any community to just follow through with annual inspections of their rental units, see how they're doing, making sure occupants are familiar with HRV, making sure they're any maintenance that they might be responsible for is being followed up on, and that the units are being taken care of in a suitable manner. Smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. So again, very important that they're operational, tested to be operational, right? Before anybody moves in, before anybody occupies the building. most during construction, most will have like a covering or tape on around so that they're not, I guess, damaged or otherwise activated during construction. But again, before anybody moves in, before anybody gets a set of keys, making sure that those are tested, making sure that they activate, making sure that they sound, they can be silenced, all that sort of stuff. That again, before anybody moves in, if they're interconnected, you know, activating an alarm in a basement should activate other alarms upstairs or in bedrooms or wherever. And again, that's something that should be tested. Final inspection, however that looks. And in my mind, something that can be, I guess, followed up on again during those annual inspections, right? Going through a unit, making sure that, yep, smoke alarms are still there. Give them another test. They still work. Maybe you got to change batteries. Maybe you got to change alarms, whatever that is. But it gives an opportunity for that. And again, exterior maintenance, grass cutting, snow removal, the expectation on who's responsible for that. I've seen a large, some people want to cut grass. They're coming from a unit where they used to cut grass. Now they like it. So just clarifying who's responsible, right? That is all I have to get today for everybody. So thank you, Nyawa. Thank you for your time. Again, thank you to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation for sponsoring this session and the previous sessions. You will get an email with the slides and I guess access to our YouTube channel link with previous sessions and a bit more information on there. So again, Nyawa, thank you, everybody.